The helmet was found half buried in the mud of an abandoned trench near the outskirts of Caen, its surface eaten away by years of rain and rust. A thin layer of earth clung stubbornly to the curved steel, as if even the ground itself refused to let go of what it had swallowed. Private Andrew Miller knelt beside it, brushing away the dirt with slow, careful strokes. The war had moved on months ago, leaving this stretch of land hollow and eerily quiet. No gunfire, no marching boots, only the whisper of wind over broken wire and shattered timber. "What do you think it is?" his fellow soldier asked from behind. "A grave," Andrew muttered. He lifted the helmet. It was heavier than it should have been. Something rattled inside. Andrew hesitated, then tipped it forward. A folded, yellowed piece of paper slid out and landed in his palm. A letter. The edges were fragile, curled inward from damp and time. Faint pencil marks bled through the paper, each line struggling to remain visible after years in the dark. Andrew unfolded it carefully, eyes narrowing as he tried to make out the words. The handwriting was uneven but deliberate, the kind written by someone who knew these might be his last thoughts. "If anyone finds this, know that my name is Samuel Carter." Andrew's breath caught. He glanced at the helmet again, its inner lining torn, stained with a dark shadow that no rain could wash away. Samuel Carter, not a name in a report, not a number carved onto a cross. A voice. Andrew continued reading. "I was ordered to hold this line tonight. They say help is coming. I no longer believe them." The words felt frozen in time, as if Samuel had written them only moments ago, not years. A chill crept up Andrew's spine as he scanned further down the page. "If you are reading this, then I did not see another dawn." Wind stirred around him, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and iron. The empty trench seemed to lean closer, listening. Andrew swallowed and lowered himself onto the edge of the trench, the letter trembling slightly in his fingers. Somewhere in this silent field, a man had waited for morning that never came, and now, through rust and mud, Samuel Carter was speaking again. Not through medals, not through history books, but through a final whisper left behind in a forgotten helmet. Andrew's fingers tightened around the brittle paper as he continued to read, each line drawing him deeper into a night that no longer existed. "The sky has been silent for hours. Too silent. The men beside me try to joke, but their voices shake. We all know this silence is only the pause before the storm." Andrew looked up from the page, eyes scanning the empty trench. The mud, the broken sandbags, the twisted coils of barbed wire. They all felt like echoes of figures who had once crouched right where he now knelt. He returned to the letter. "My hands won't stop trembling, not because of the cold, because I can hear the whistle of shells in my mind before they even fall." A distant gust of wind moved across the field as if the land itself remembered. "I think of home, of my mother's garden, of the way the sun touched the curtains every morning when I was still just a boy. It feels like another lifetime. Another man." Andrew shifted uneasily. Samuel's words weren't just a soldier's account. They were the slow unraveling of fear, honest, painful, human. "If this is truly the end, I hope someone knows I did not die angry, only tired. So terribly tired." Andrew exhaled shakily. Beside him, his fellow soldier watched in uneasy silence. "What does it say?" he asked. Andrew hesitated. "It says he stayed," he murmured, even when he knew no one was coming. He looked back at the faded lines. "The helmet feels heavier tonight." as if it already knows it will not leave this trench. Andrew swallowed hard. The words blurred slightly before his eyes, though not from rain. He imagined Samuel Carter crouched here in the mud, helmet pulled low, rifle clutched tightly, listening to the distant tremor of approaching forces, waiting for footsteps that would bring either relief or death. Then the final lines came into view, faint but unmistakable. "If you find this, please remember me as a man, not just a soldier." Andrew lowered the letter slowly. The trench fell quiet again. But somehow it no longer felt empty. It felt watched, guarded by memory. And as Andrew sat there holding Samuel's last words, he realized this story was not finished. The letter was not just a goodbye, it was the beginning of something the war had tried and failed to erase. Andrew sat in the trench long after the wind fell silent again, the letter resting in his hands like a fragile relic. The paper had softened from the damp, but the words clung to it stubbornly, as if Samuel Carter himself refused to fade. He read the lines once more, slower this time, tracing the wavering pencil marks with his thumb. "I hear movement now. Not our men. Different boots, different rhythm." Andrew's breath grew shallow. "They are closer than before. I cannot see them, only the shadows they leave against the wire when the flares rise." The past felt closer than the present. The trench no longer seemed abandoned, only paused, suspended between what had been and what could no longer change. His fellow soldier shifted behind him. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Andrew nodded, though his eyes stayed on the page. "He knew," he murmured. "He knew they were coming." The wind stirred faintly, carrying a whisper that almost sounded like distant gunfire. He continued reading. "If this is my last moment, then I choose to write instead of scream." Andrew closed his eyes briefly. "I leave this not for officers, not for commanders. I leave it for whoever walks this broken ground after me." There was something strangely intimate in the way Samuel wrote, as if he had known Andrew would be the one to read these words years later. Surrounded by the silence of peace that felt undeserved, Andrew slowly folded the letter and glanced toward the horizon where the trench line disappeared into tall grass and shattered earth. "How many more like this?" he whispered. No one answered. He stood carefully, stepping out of the trench, but the weight of the letter did not leave him. It felt heavier than any weapon he had carried, heavier than any pack on his shoulders. He looked down once more at the rusted helmet resting in the mud. Samuel's last shield, Samuel's last witness. Andrew knew then that he could not simply return the letter to its silent grave. It didn't belong to the earth anymore. It belonged to memory. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the abandoned battlefield, Andrew realized the truth that gnawed at him more than the chill. Somewhere far away, there might still be someone who had once called Samuel Carter by his first name. A mother, a sister, a home. And they had no idea that his voice still existed, hidden not in stone but in the quiet fold of forgotten paper. Andrew carried the helmet and the letter back to camp as if they were sacred. Every step across the uneven ground felt deliberate, measured, as though he were walking beside Samuel himself. The day faded into a dull gray sky, and the wind whispered through bare trees like a tired prayer. At the small command tent, Andrew placed the helmet gently on a wooden table. The officer on duty glanced at it with mild curiosity. "What's that?" he asked. "A man," Andrew replied quietly. Or what's left for anyone to remember him by? He unfolded the letter carefully and read a portion aloud, his voice steady but distant, as if he were translating grief into duty. The officer listened in silence, the weight of the words settling between them. We'll send it to records, the officer finally said. See if this Samuel Carter has any living relatives. Andrew nodded. Days passed, then weeks. The war moved elsewhere, leaving the trench behind once more. But the letter did not disappear. It traveled through careful hands, through dusty archives, until a thin envelope marked personal correspondence found its way across the Atlantic. To a quiet town where roses grew beside white fences. Mrs. Eleanor Carter opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was her son's final letter. Her fingers traced the penciled lines as tears blurred the words. She sat at the small kitchen table for a long time, the world outside fading into distant silence. He had been afraid. He had been brave. He had been human. Somewhere in Europe, her boy had chosen to write instead of cry. And now, at last, his voice had found the only place it had ever truly meant to return. Miles away, Andrew stood once again at the edge of the same quiet field, where tall grass now bent gently in the breeze. He did not return the helmet to the trench. Instead, he placed it beside a small wooden marker, carved with simple care. Samuel Carter, a man remembered. No flag waved, no trumpet sounded. Only the soft sigh of wind across a battlefield that had finally fallen silent. Andrew stepped back, removed his own helmet, and stood still, honoring not a soldier but a soul who refused to vanish. And as he turned away, he understood that history is not only written by generals or victories. Sometimes it is written by the fragile tremble of a hand and a final letter left waiting in the rust of time. Years passed. The fields near Caen softened under spring rains, the scars of trenches slowly reclaimed by grass and wildflowers. The barbed wire rusted into the soil, and the echoes of gunfire faded into stories told by older men in quieter rooms. But Andrew Miller never forgot the weight of that helmet in his hands. He kept Samuel's copy of the letter folded carefully inside his own journal, a reminder that some voices survive not through bronze or marble, but through ink and memory. Whenever the world felt too loud or too indifferent, Andrew would unfold the fragile page and read again the words that had traveled through mud, rust, and time just to reach him. If you find this, please remember me as a man, not just a soldier. Andrew did. Every year on the same quiet morning when the fog curled gently over the old battlefield, he returned. He stood by the small marker where the helmet rested, touched its cold metal once, and bowed his head in silence. Samuel Carter did not fade, not into statistics, not into reports, not into forgotten lists of the dead. He lived on, in a mother's trembling smile as she read her son's final thoughts, in the soft hush of countryside that once roared with violence, and in the heart of a soldier who understood that war's greatest cruelty was not always the taking of life, but the erasing of the stories left behind. Andrew knelt once more beside the marker and placed a single wildflower against the rusted steel. "Rest now, Samuel," he murmured. "You've been heard." The wind moved gently across the plain, carrying with it no cries, no commands, only the murmur of peace long overdue. And somewhere beyond time, the final letter of a forgotten soldier drifted into the quiet. no longer a plea but a promise fulfilled.